I'm Mike Veale, Wiltshire Police Chief Constable. Today, Wiltshire Police have published its report into Operation Conifer, the investigation into allegations of non-recent child abuse against Sir Edward Heath. Wiltshire Police, on behalf of the National Police Chiefs Council, took on this investigation knowing that due to the public prominence of Sir Edward Heath, both during his life and after his death, there would be significant public interest, comment and intense scrutiny. I recognise that Operation Conifer had the potential to damage confidence in Wiltshire Police, a force that I am proud of and which has a commendable and strong reputation. This damage, I believe, would be due to the views held by some about investigating allegations concerning deceased individuals. Some may have challenges around the costs associated with complex investigations at a time of budget cuts, and perhaps some who may have intransigent opinions and will always defend the conduct and behaviour of others, whatever the veracity of the allegations. Mindful of this, I have ensured that this investigation has been conducted fairly, objectively, with respect and without fear or favour. We have gone where the evidence has taken us, whether it supports or negates the allegations. Most importantly, the report does not draw any conclusions as to the likely guilt or innocence of Sir Edward Heath, or make any comment on the action that the Crown Prosecution Service may have taken had he been alive today. I have absolute confidence in the Operation Conifer investigation team, knowing that they would conduct a high-quality and ethical investigation, where fairness, proportionality and integrity have remained at its core throughout. Every single decision and element of this investigation has followed the guidance from Operation Hydrant, the National Police Chiefs Coordination Hub for non-recent child abuse investigations. At no stage has there been any deviation from current advice, guidance and legislation. The Operation Hydrant advice is compelling, legal and proportionate. There is an obligation to conduct an investigation into allegations to establish the facts of the case, to identify offenders, whether deceased or alive, and bring any living offenders to justice. Most importantly and most obviously is the duty to protect and safeguard children and adults who may be vulnerable to abuse today. I would ask others to be mindful that when investigators received allegations of child sexual abuse, the investigation team did not know what it did not know. They did not know the circumstances, the veracity, the risks, the implications, or the vulnerability factors. Until a proportionate, professional, and objective investigation was conducted, it would be impossible to identify and safeguard children or other vulnerable adults who may be at risk today. The safeguarding and protection of vulnerable people will continue to be the primary reason for conducting this investigation, and my team has not deviated from this legal and professional responsibility. Children or adults who allege that they are being abused or have been abused must have the trust and confidence in the police. They deserve to be listened to. They deserve to know they will be taken seriously. They deserve to know that the police will support them, and they deserve to know that their anonymity will be preserved. That is what I said we would do, that is what we have done, and that is what we will continue to do without fear or favour. There have been many views expressed as to whether the police should investigate alleged offences committed by a deceased suspect. Notwithstanding the guidance, I believe this was the right moral thing, ethical thing, and professional thing to do. But I appreciate that every case needs to be judged on its own merits. I am satisfied that there were compelling and obvious reasons to investigate allegations made about Sir Edward Heath. As I've said, Sir Edward Heath was an extremely prominent, influential and high-profile person who was arguably one of the most powerful people in the world commensurate with his public office he held. The allegations against him were of the utmost seriousness and from a significant number of people. I hope people will understand that given these circumstances, it would be an indefensible dereliction of my public duty as a Chief Constable not to have investigated such serious allegations against a former Prime Minister, even though he is deceased. I have been clear from the outset that at the end of the investigation, in line with our intention to be as transparent and open as possible, we would publish a summary closure report, and that is what we have done today. The publication of this report is also in line with guidance issued by Operation Hydrant. The report has been scrutinised by a number of stakeholders and contributors to ensure complete balance, accuracy and measure, and only makes findings that can legitimately and realistically be made. The report provides a factual account of the context of this investigation, what the investigation focused upon, and how the investigation was conducted. Operation Conifer, by its very nature, was complex, politically sensitive and unique. Due to these unprecedented circumstances, I have sought confidential advice, counsel and support throughout from a number of people. That confidentiality between me and those individuals will remain intact. The role of the police is very clear in the criminal justice process. The police have a duty to investigate and go where the evidence takes them. It is not our role to prove innocence of guilt, but to present the facts. Therefore, this report does not apportion guilt. It does not suggest or conclude guilt, and no inference should be drawn from the investigative decisions or conclusions being made by the police. Extreme caution has been given so that no assumptions are publicly drawn about the truths or untruths. Presumption of innocence is enshrined in our law and is the cornerstone of a just and fair judicial process. Despite misleading and inaccurate commentary, nobody from the investigation team or I have made any public or private comment or inference as to the hypothetical outcome of a judicial process if Sir Edward Heath were alive. Any such comments or hypotheses would be flawed by their very nature. They are misleading and they distort the criminal justice process. Wiltshire Police has and will continue to do all that we are able to protect the anonymity of those people who have come forward. This report will therefore not identify the details of any people who have made disclosures of sexual abuse. I understand that there is an insatiable appetite by some to identify the victims. I will do everything in my power to prevent this from happening. In order that this investigation remained justified and proportionate, an independent scrutiny panel was established to check and challenge the investigation. The panel members were given responsibility to examine and test the decision-making and the approach by the investigation team. The panel has been provided with detailed briefings, material, and more recently, full access to the published report. This scrutiny has proved invaluable and enabled Operation Conifer to remain firmly aligned to the legislation and objectives of this investigation. I would like to thank the members of the panel for their time, their expertise, their challenge, and their support to the investigation. In addition to the independent scrutiny panel, Operation Hydrant was asked to conduct 2 reviews of the investigation itself. Both reviews of the investigation concluded that it was proportionate, justified, and in compliance with the guidance. Further scrutiny took place during the course of the investigation with a value for money review by Her Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary, which was commissioned by the Home Office further to an application for central funding. This review concluded that resources deployed to this investigation had been proportionate and reasonable and commensurate to the scale of the investigation. They made particular reference to the strong governance, strict financial controls with the staffing levels which have been kept to a minimum with low associated costs. In total, 24 people have worked on this Operation Conifer at varying points. The cost of the investigation to date is £1.5 million. The Home Secretary has recently approved Home Office funding of £1.1 million to take into account that this was an investigation carried out on behalf of the National Police Chiefs Council and commissioned by Operation Hydrant. This decision made by the Home Secretary, I believe, underlines the Prime Minister's personal commitment to addressing issues of child sexual abuse that in the past, as Mrs Veale said last week, have tended to be sidelined. During the last 2 years, there has been much commentary in relation to the potential for a judge-led review into Operation Conifer. At this time, I have not heard compelling reasons for such a review, and therefore I am not persuaded to follow this course of action. As I have said, I am clear that it is not the role of the police to judge the guilt or innocence of people, and it is obvious that at the end of an investigation concerning a deceased suspect, there is no potential for a criminal trial. Most of the elements of the judicial process are absent. It is my view that the suggestion that a retired judge or other judicial appointment could legitimately pronounce the guilt or innocence of Sir Edward Heath is ill-conceived. I believe this would neither provide value for money or indeed a legitimate outcome of the guilt or innocence of Sir Edward Heath. Throughout this investigation, I have been very clear that Wiltshire Police will be as open and as transparent as possible, in line with our requirement for the police to remain accountable to the public. It is only right that when an investigation with such significance is conducted, the people like me who make these decisions should be held to account. The public should be able to judge the leadership of such high-profile operations based upon the merits and quality of the investigation that has taken place, and not misleading speculation, rumour, or inaccurate conjecture. The publication of the summary closure report today provides the openness, transparency, and public accountability that I said that there would be, and the report author has complied fully with Operation Hydrant guidance on publication. It will now be a matter for others to evaluate and decide what steps should be taken in relation to the Operation Conifer findings. I recognise that this investigation, the findings, and the summary closure report may raise further questions. But I also believe it signals a watershed moment for people and victims who have suggested or implied there has been a state cover-up from senior figures who may have been involved in child abuse. As many people will know, ICSA, the Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse, was set up in March 2015 by the then Home Secretary, now Prime Minister Theresa May. The inquiry was clear from the outset that it was required to identify the extent to which state or non-state institutions have failed in their duty of care to protect children from child sexual abuse. I acknowledge the terms of reference which are currently publicised on the ICSA website regarding allegations of child sexual abuse and exploitation by people of public prominence associated with Westminster. I particularly welcome their focus upon allegations of institutional cover-up and conspiracy, and that they will review the inadequacies of law enforcement responses to these allegations. In light of this, the legitimacy, the legality of this investigation is more relevant and more crucial than ever before. The public interest in this case is clear and unequivocal. The statutory responsibility as the Chief Constable to have conducted this investigation without fear or favour, I trust, is now obvious to all. In closing, I would like to make a few further important points. I want to send a specific message to those who have come forward as part of this investigation. I know it takes bravery and courage to do so. I hope that you feel we have listened to you, we have taken you seriously, and you have been treated with dignity and respect. People who are victims of abuse in the past, now, or in the future should be reassured. Reassured by the way in which Wiltshire Police have listened to victims and survivors, and reassured that no matter who the alleged perpetrator of abuse is, we will take your allegations seriously. We will investigate, no matter how difficult that may be. That said, I will remind you again that this investigation has drawn no inference about Sir Edward Heath's guilt or innocence in this case. Operation Conifer has now come to an end, and the ICSA's terms of reference are clear. This watershed moment regarding investigations of people connected to the establishment should not be underestimated. When the Prime Minister was the Home Secretary, she said in Parliament, "We have to send a clear message to everyone involved in the protection of children that there can be no excuse for failing to protect them or failing to bring perpetrators to justice." Finally, I would like to recognise and thank the Operation Conifer investigation team. The scrutiny panel believes that the investigation was fair, sensitive and rigorous, and this applies to complainants and suspects, including Sir Edward Heath. I am proud of the team's compassion towards victims and survivors throughout this investigation. The team have conducted themselves with diligence and expertise. Their values have enabled this investigation to be completed to the letter of the National Police Chief's guidance. They have not buckled under the pressure of relentless external speculation and criticism. They have not lost sight of the need to fulfil the principles of this investigation. They have maintained the highest standards of professionalism in the face of persistent negative commentary to ensure that this investigation has not been hijacked or derailed. For that, for their dedication and commitment to carrying out their roles without fear or favour, they are to be commended, and I thank each and every one of them for their service.